All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We are back into our leadership development series. This is a continuation of our last episode where we talked about power as we talked about a number of things that can derail you in your leadership development process, of which power was one of those that we decided to have a full episode of its own and chat about the downfall of leaders and the things to be cognizant of, aware of, kind of a cautionary tale of the end outcome of a lot of leaders that we've seen over time. We're going to talk about some of the best practices to avoid those pitfalls, how to put some guardrails in place, and then some ideas around kind of the best use of and the application of power. So with that, we're going to bring on Dr. Hall. He is a business psychologist, a executive coach. He's a public speaker and a multi-time author. And then the application side of things, where he's very familiar with the biology and how the brain works and how we can execute and apply the things that we talk about. How you doing today, Dr. Hall?
I'm doing quite well. Thank you for asking. Thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited about this one. I think going to the end to talk about what things look like so that you don't create a mess uh, would be a good idea, right? We teach all these
Yeah.
things about being leaders and development and becoming a leader, and then people sometimes just don't know what to do with it.
Uh, Many times they don't.
Quite
Yes.
often. So it'll be interesting. Well, very good. Well, let me do just a couple of small, quick housekeeping items here, real quick, and then we'll talk with Dr. Hall. My name is, for those of you that I haven't met, my name is Jerod Lee. I'm the associate broker and team lead here at My Home Connection, also known as MHC Realty. Our sponsor for today is the Perfect Real Estate Business. We've been developing this for the better part of the last couple of decades, now in large part with Dr. Hall introducing things like business coaching, life coaching, mentoring and training, things that just would really benefit with getting the mindset right and developing the business that you're ultimately excited to have and is flourishing. But with that, we'll bring Dr. Hall back on and kind of just chat about, we talked about pre-show, not really giving any names, but history. I can't believe I'm going to use this word, but it just popped into my head. Replete of of examples of people that acquired power and didn't know what to do with it. But actually, I guess I'll let you back up and talk about kind of what is it we're talking about when we say power.
Yeah. I'll start with what I think is a little bit of a concern a lot of people have with that word. Um, everybody thinks, oh, I want to be a leader, but I don't want to have power. It's like, what are you talking about? If you decide to become a leader, you will have power. That's kind of a necessary ingredient of leadership, is having power. So what I meet people who are very, very nervous about it because of the Lord Acton quote that power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And they believe that if you have power, you will be corrupted. And so in order for them not to be corrupted, they avoid power. Okay, then you can be completely powerless and let some other corrupt person take over your life.
Right.
Not everyone who has power is corrupted. Power, in my definition, is influence. It's the ability to change things. It's the ability to make things happen. And that can be used for good or for ill. So in my mind, power is completely neutral. I mean, if we use the synonym of electricity for power, you know, power is good. I mean, we're using electricity right now in order to make this go. But electricity can be bad if I stick my hand in an electrical transformer and don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to get myself killed. So it really is about knowing how to use and direct that power for good, using it in the right amounts and in the right ways. So I'm very I guess I'm very pro power. That any time a human being aspires to be a leader, aspires to have influence, then they want power. What people tend to think of is, oh, I'm going to be like Stalin, or I'm going to be like Hitler, and I'll be completely corrupted by that, or I'll be like Mao Zedong, and I'll end up killing millions of people. Well, people who there are people who, if they get that much power, they will do that. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about how do you guard against that. But anytime you want to make a change, anytime you want to have influence, anytime you want to create an effective action, you will be having power. So anybody who's in the leadership game needs to be aware that they are seeking power. And that can be for either good or ill, but it is the character of a person, the moral decisions that they make ahead of time, and the systems that they set up around them that will keep them from the abuse of power. Mm-hmm. I think that's what most people are concerned about, is the abuse of power.
Yeah, and if they're concerned that they might potentially abuse it, and actually we can back up a little bit. We've talked on prior episodes that there are people that don't appreciate or underappreciate their occasions of being a leader, right? We talked about the average person having, an estimate is 10,000, opportunities to be a leader. So, whether you think you are or you don't think you are, you probably are at different points. There's people in your life that you have influence on, whether it's your nephew, your children, or, people at work or whatever. So acknowledge the fact that you're going to have some influence, which is a leadership role that comes with power by definition of leading. I mean, leading yep. is a sense of power and moving things in some kind of direction, and it doesn't have to be bad.
And many people don't use it badly. What we typically focus on are all the people who use power badly, and that's because they weren't properly prepared for what happens. And I very often use the analogy, and I probably used it in our previous discussions, that again, it's like electricity. I am safe with the wall outlet. I use the wall outlet every day, 110. 110 volts. I know how to use that. I'm a little more nervous by the dryer. That's 220.
Yeah.
But I have absolutely no training out on a transformer, and that'll get me killed. However, there are linemen who work on transformers every day, and the reason they don't get killed, and I would, is because they have training and they've practiced. And that's the same with any kind of power. Is if you've trained and you've had practice, you're not likely to hurt yourself or somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so again, prior to the episode, not naming names, but if we just talk about different kind of genres, we talk about, musicians jump out, they're very obvious, right? We've all seen, lives being lost or being gone all too soon because they can't handle the fame, the power, the money that comes along with being a musician that they're aspiring to be. Athletes, we hear about them all the time going off the rails and, just not able to handle it. Politicians, the list goes on and on and on. I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to see evidence in life of people getting money, getting fame, and totally being unable to handle it.
Well, I think there are some people who haven't been trained to do it, and it isn't that you take a course on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. It's the training that you get in childhood about self-control, and it's the training you get in childhood about humility and having a proper view of yourself in relationship to the world. I can think of lots of musicians whose lives have been destroyed by drugs and reckless living. But those guys, and same with athletes, we can all think of those examples of people who are in and out of prison and, they've lost their fortune. What we don't typically see are all of those athletes and musicians who have used their power well. I'll give a counter example. Duff McKagan, who's the bass player for Guns N' Roses, he had his demons to slay as it relates to drugs and alcohol, but he got himself clean and sober, and then he went back to college and became a financial planner. I don't know if you knew that or not.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Right, so he realized, oh, I got all this money. I got to figure out what to do with it. And he went and got himself educated. He got himself trained. So he had all this power, and he went back to school to learn how to use that power in terms of money. And apparently he's an advisor to other musicians because he understands. So he's a person who's got himself clean and sober. And I mean, it's a great story of redemption, because what did he do? He went and he got himself the training. He got himself the education. For him, it was through martial arts and through academic education. And he's still on tour, so good for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you just touched on the master skill, the delay of gratification, and how if you're, and we've talked about this before, but if you haven't acquired the delay of gratification in your younger years, it's hard to develop it, but it's a necessity to develop the more power that you're going to acquire.
Yes. If you haven't figured out how to tell yourself no, when you have power, you won't have any guardrails. There won't be anybody around you to say you're not allowed to do that. And there won't be any natural limits to the amount of money you can spend, because you've got plenty. And so you can burn it like crazy. You can spend, $10,000 on a weekend. Well, I don't have $10,000 to spend on a weekend. I don't have that kind of power. So if you've got, millions of dollars of income coming in, you look at it and you go, well, that's not that big of a deal. But if you haven't learned to tell yourself no in the little things, you won't have enough practice to tell yourself no in the big things when you don't have those external guardrails.
Well, let's talk about why your guardrails either minimize or completely go away, right? You've mentioned that these people that are around you, they don't want you to stop living a life of excess because they benefit from the spillover and or don't want to kind of be ostracized from the group, right? They just don't want to speak up and say, hey, man, you're really making some poor choices here.
Well, I think what happens is we all have parity with our friends. We have economic and emotional parity. There's an equal amount of give and take. I pick up dinner, you pick up dinner. You grab the coffee, then the next time I get the coffee. And we trade these little bits back and forth. Well, if one person, and if we look at what a cup of coffee costs for our income, and then somebody in a relatively short period of time is making 100 times what they used to make, well, then then a trip to Bermuda is the equivalent proportion of their income that a cup of coffee is. And so their friends, you can't keep up. And so real friends will feel a sense of guilt and shame for taking this person's money to go on a trip to Bermuda. So they'll say no. Well, if I'm a wealthy person and I want to go to Bermuda, I want to go with some people. Well, guess who's going to sign up? It's all the kiss ups and toadies. They're all going to sign up, and they're the ones who won't tell you no. And so one of the natural guardrails are our friends and family members who will hold us accountable, who have a long enough relationship. The problem for people in power is how do we let our loved ones know that we need that relationship, even though they can't keep up financially. And so it's important that we continue those relationships with people, even if they don't have as much money, because they're important to us.
Yeah.
And so it's important for people who gain in power to say, hey, listen, you don't have the same amount of money, you don't have the same amount of fame, you don't have the same amount of whatever the kind of political power. It doesn't really matter. I need you in my life, and I need you to to tell me when I'm out of line, because none of these kiss ups and toadies are going to do it.
Well, how much of this is a character issue? I mean, it seems to me like if somebody just had really solid character and had developed the master skill, is that, and I guess character is, that's just a broad term. What do you do? What don't you do? How do you treat people? Anyway, I'm not quite sure what my question is, and hopefully you know where I'm going with that. But
Well, what is character? And the way I define it is character are the moral choices that I make to limit, that's to say no to limit the excesses of my personality. And if I haven't developed that moral grid ahead of time to tell myself no, when I don't have an external moral constraint or an external economic constraint, then I'll just do whatever I want. So character is really the accumulation of good mental habits to tell yourself no. If I can't afford a $500 jar of caviar, well, then I don't buy one. But if I can afford it, then and I eat 10 of them, well, not only have I used up a lot of money, but I've also done something that's probably not super healthy. And so it's not just money; it's excess of all different types. And character is, in my view, telling yourself no based on knowing your particular vulnerabilities, your particular excesses.
is it the what grandma told you, everything in moderation? Is that the crux of why people go off the rails? Because anything in excess just begets more of it, which begets more of it. Then once you have too much of any one thing, food, alcohol, sex. I mean, if you get more, if you continue to get more, you want more, and there becomes a point where now you can't handle the more, but you're craving more because that's our natural human tendency, and now you're off the rails.
Yeah. So the natural human tendency is to seek pleasure, to seek enjoyment. And there's two parts of this. We confuse happiness with pleasure. And pleasure is certainly a component of happiness, but it isn't happiness. It's not the same. If you have a life full of pleasure, that does not mean that you'll be happy. And again, pleasure, positive emotions are part of happiness, but they certainly aren't the whole thing. The other part of it is that hedonism is a diminishing return. In it, all kinds of pleasure work like drugs do. That we become habituated to whatever stimulus we have. And the enjoyment of that stimulus has diminishing effects the more we use and the longer we use it. So I'm trying. So with drugs, if you take a certain kind of drug, you will get exactly what the label says. Well, if you go, well, that was great, I'm going to do this every day, and you do it every day, well, after a week, you're not going to have the same pop. Mm-hmm. That's just your brain habituating to the new stimulus.
You just got to,
and eventually,
now new normal is here instead of here.
Yeah, and you just got to keep jacking it up. Well, the same is true with any kind of hedonistic pleasure. Be it buying things or watching movies, or it doesn't really matter what it is. The more you do it, the less enjoyable it is. And so the human brain really requires contrast, which means you need the pleasurable stimulus, but then you need the lack of it in order to really enjoy having it.
I have a recent, hopefully this will fit into the conversation here, but caffeine. So I was trying to get, sleep kind of under control and just trying to eliminate.
As I'm drinking a cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, let's eliminate caffeine and see how that goes. And,
Yeah.
that's a good exercise. And then, I was like, okay, I feel pretty good about this, but there are occasions where I think caffeine is helpful. So
Sure.
once I touch caffeine again, a drink that before would not have really made me feel any one way or another. I'm like, wow, that hit. I feel that caffeine, and what's interesting is you can appreciate things more when you only do it on occasion and not do it. How else would I word that on you?
Whenever you experience whatever that is.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so let's give a different example. Let's say that you love steak and you have steak every day. You have you have a filet mignon. I mean, in a beautiful cut of beef or a porterhouse. It doesn't really matter to me. Whatever your favorite steak is, you get that steak. You eat it every day,
yeah,
but you only get a baked potato once a year.
yeah, yeah. A steak is
Which
going to be awful, and the baked potato is going to be.
that the baked potato that one day a year is going to be the most delicious part of that meal because you become habituated to the consistent stimulus, but it's the novel stimulus. It's the contrast of not having it to having it. It's just like hunger. If you've ever been really hungry, it really doesn't matter what you eat. It's delicious.
I have that experience. I did a prolonged fast, and I was planning on keeping going, but I was just like, okay, I got to eat something, and I just found this. It was just one of those kind of chicken noodle soup things. It wasn't anything special. It was just off the shelf, like the cheapest thing you can buy. But after that prolonged fast, man, I ate that and my taste buds were flying. It was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yes. So what character does, so we're talking about pleasure here, but what character does is we tell ourselves no on a regular basis so that we have some pleasure and then some fasting from pleasure. Mm-hmm. And that's what gives us that experience of true pleasure over the long term. So whatever the stimulus is, whatever positive stimulus it is, you have some and then you have some time when you don't have it. That's what makes it more pleasurable later. Yeah. Well, with power, there's no natural limit to having the stimulus all the time. You have to limit yourself.
Yeah. I'll add one more: desserts.
Sure.
You really appreciate desserts when you only have them every so often, but if you have it, like, oh well, it's nothing special now. It's just
if you have it every night, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So just to summarize everything you said, we're talking about stuff that you ingest or take in or participate in. But when you're talking about power, once you have power, it's around you all the time. You can do with it whatever you want.
You don't have the natural limits, the natural hurdles to getting it.
It's right there.
And so if you have money, if you have fame, if whatever it is, I think it was Justin Timberlake, and he said before I was famous, there were so many things I wanted, but after I was famous, I didn't have to buy them anymore because everybody wanted to give them to me. So clothes, cars, all these things. He said it was really weird when I could finally afford them, people would give them to me. And what he's describing is that's what happens when you get power. People then, to curry your favor and to gain influence with you, a powerful person, they begin to give you things because they're using you. And so he would get clothes and cars because if he's seen wearing certain clothes or driving a certain car, guess what? That helps the clothes manufacturer or the car manufacturer or whatever the product is. Yeah. And so when you have power, you find that it's easier to get things. And so you have to limit yourself.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up his name, and we're trying not to in general, but I literally
just because he's said it, I would consider him a bad example.
Yeah, no, I want to clarify that, but I think it's very interesting that was the name you picked because example. What he recently said something exactly in line with what we're talking about is he's like, I couldn't repeat it verbatim, obviously, but it was, people just use me. That he finally, he's at this point where he's looking around. Is like, why all the people around me are using me
Sure.
for whatever influence or access or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, which is why when you have power, it's hard to find people you can trust. So some of the guardrails to power are to make sure you keep some people who have known you for a long time who will hold you accountable. Family, longtime friends, because new friends will be using you. And unfortunately, you'll find some of the people that used to be your what you thought were your closest friends, they begin to use you.
Oof, all of that's sad.
It's sad, but it's just the reality is that if you're the person who's breaking the trail, if you're the trailblazer, then everybody will follow you. They want to slipstream behind your efforts, and it'll be easier for them to get the things that they want. And so yeah, you will be used by some people, and be prepared for it. That's some of the consequence of power.
So when you're in your path to leadership, whatever that looks like, right? You talk about, and this will be another topic all on its own, but glory, the full expression of yourself and how
Yeah.
it is that you have influence in your domain of expertise and what you're passionate about, what you're excited about. So in that journey, we're saying you should be developing character or refraining from things all along the while, delaying your gratification and teaching yourself to have the power to control your power. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say?
and those are all habits that you should have been practicing. Excuse me, should have been practicing all along the way. Otherwise, you won't have any practice on how to handle power.
Yeah. So if it's an overnight success, which interesting is rarely the case, but
Rarely.
and by
Yeah.
the way, how much practice did you do? Right. I mean, again, try not to use names, but we know big name stars that just have so much power that they're never questioned, even for the oddest things that they do. You're like, well, who let
Right.
them? Who thought that was an okay thing to do?
Right. Who thought that was a good idea? What? So let me talk about the positive aspects of power.
Yeah.
We very rarely hear about the people who gain fame, fortune, whatever, and don't go corrupt, because that's not a very interesting story.
Right.
And there was a period in my life when I did work, and I got a chance to meet a lot of people in the NFL, and there were some knuckleheads. I mean, there were really some people who, were really, really, you could just tell they were trouble, right?
Yeah.
But I met a lot of players. I met a lot of coaches. And what I discovered is most of them were really normal people. I mean, these were huge men, by the way. I mean, they had, their hands were the size of bear paws,
Yeah.
So they were exceptional physically. But I met so many men in that endeavor who were so normal and wanted to use their power for good. Those people are never going to get any play. So we focus on the extremes, the people who make the news. But I would argue, and that's just the sample of athletics, that most of them, they love their spouses, they love their kids, they go to church, they do all these normal things.
Yeah. We
But
still talk about them.
yeah, we just don't talk about them. So I think there are lots of powerful people who use their power for good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what we're specifically trying to accomplish today is to help you identify kind of, what your ability is to delay gratification, where your character's at, who you can rely on to ask, hey, you know me now. If I'm heading, this is a direction I want to head in. Will you hold me accountable later? So all of these things put into place, hopefully if you have a significant amount of power, you keep a life that's I hate to say worth living, but you know what I mean, where you're not essentially doing the opposite of what you were trying to do, and that's be happy and full of joy and have some peace. Because
Right.
you don't.
But happiness, joy, peace come from having a purpose, from self-sacrifice, from not focusing so much on self. And again, pleasure is fine, but happy people are not particularly focused on themselves. They're focused on a larger purpose, and very often that larger purpose involves other people. And so they use their power for the benefit of others or for some larger purpose, and they're really not really focused on themselves that much. And in my work, I've had the good fortune, I mean, very good fortune, of getting to work with a lot of those people. And people say, well, don't you work with jerks? It's like, no, they don't hire me.
Yeah,
Because
they want to be told, go do whatever you want, whenever you want to do it.
right.
But this is the quickest way to get there.
My job is to work with people who want to get better, who really recognize with some humility, I need to keep learning. Okay, that's, those are the people that are fun to work with, and they're likely to use power well. And so when they work with me, we work on how do we help that person become, as you said, the full expression of who they were meant to be. That's a lot of fun to work with, to see those people expand in power and influence.
Yeah. Well, I like this topic because it hits these two items simultaneously, your guardrails and then your use and application of power. If it's an outward, servant-minded purpose where you're serving others, you're not focused on, what car can I buy? What house can I have? What trips can I make? How much, things can I buy? How many trips? That's all overindulgence that's just going to beget more, because your more is not enough, then you want more and more, versus if you're looking outward to accomplish things for other people, you can do that in an unlimited manner without requiring self-control.
But that's not to say that if you have power that you should, wear a hair shirt and
right.
And be like Gandhi and have no possessions. I mean, that was fine for Gandhi. He had incredible power. He just didn't have a lot of possessions.
Yeah, Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa is another example of tremendous power without a lot of possessions. But I don't even begrudge people lots of possessions. That's not my thing. I mean, if that provides you an amount of pleasure, that's great. Enjoy it. Recognize it won't make you happy.
Right.
But I'm not anti-pleasure. I worked with a guy once, and he said, I feel really guilty about it, but I want to get a Porsche. And I was like, well, good, enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that if he's got the money, and why not? I mean, it's a pleasurable thing, and he knows it's not the thing that makes him happy, and it's not his identity.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, and
so great.
I think you just nailed on something, keyed in on something there that's super important to talk about. Is like, what's your identity? Do you feel important if people look at you like you're special because you're driving that Porsche or that Ferrari or that, Lamborghini or whatever, you're making a lot of trips? Like, if that's the identity you want, things you want to acquire and then how you want to be perceived by other people, that doesn't seem doable long term. It's flawed.
Well, yeah, but that's not an issue of the possession. That's an issue of your attitude about the possession. So, one person has a Porsche and it's their identity. Another person has a Porsche and it's a car that goes fast and they like it.
Right.
And they like it. And those are two, it's like, ooh, my precious, my Porsche versus, it's a lot of fun. You want to give it a try?
Yeah.
Those are two very different approaches. I know of a guy who has a really cool car, and people like to look at it. And he says, pretty much every time he takes it out, he says, "You want to go for a spin?" Oh no, I could never. He goes, come on, let's go.
Let's go.
And so like strangers, he'll just take them for a drive.
Nice.
Because they've never sat in a car like that.
Yeah.
And he says, why would I have a vehicle like this if I can't use it in this way? And that's his values. So it's not his identity, but it is a lot of fun. And why not? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. How does this fit into the idea of your presuppositions, your worldview on life and how you approach it? Because that's a topic we bring up quite often. Is there a misguided presupposition in having the identity versus?
I think part of it is, what is the meaning of my life? One of those presuppositions questions is, what are you going to say about meaning? And so does your life have meaning? And if you believe that meaning and purpose and identity come from possessions, then you're probably going to get yourself into trouble. And if you have a different view of the meaning of your life, there's nothing wrong with pleasure so long as it's in the right proportion to the meaning in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're chasing meaning, purpose, and identity in flawed ways, the outcome probably isn't going to be very good.
The outcome will be flawed.
It's going to be flawed. So,
and again, there's nothing wrong with those outcomes. It's what's in you that's pursuing those outcomes. That's the issue. It's not the car. It's not the house. It's not the vacation. It's none of that. Those are the tail. That's not the dog. So you got to, if you think, those people who go on those vacations and those people who do this, it's
right.
You're missing it. You're missing the point. It's what's inside you that's the issue.
Yeah, I like the idea when you talk about where people say money is the root of all evil, and that's not it. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Which one, or two words, love of, added to that, which changes the dynamic night and day.
It's a fundamentally different meaning, and it is a widely misunderstood passage of the Bible. I mean, it's widely misunderstood, and as a result, people have negative views of money. They have negative views of power, all because of that.
Well, this is full circle, right? This is what you talked about at the beginning of the episode.
Well, because money is a type of power. Yeah. It's not the only type of power, but it's a type of power.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I'm the mayor of a small town and don't have very much money, but I can make everybody in that small town do what I want, I have a lot of power. I just don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really matter the means for influence, the means to getting things done, but be aware that the excessive desire for any of those things can be corrupting.
Yeah.
But it's not the thing. It's what's inside you that's the issue.
Yeah. I love it. And I love it enough to think that makes sense to wrap up the episode. I think that's a great place to land the plane and leave it there. I would really encourage everybody to just identify, what is their meaning, what is their purpose, and then what does that journey look like? Obviously, we would love to be a part of that journey, whatever that looks like, whether it's help you, consult with you, mentor you, train you, coach you, whatever that looks like, which, by the way, are all different things. We would also obviously be an accountability coach to make sure in that journey as power develops that, keep you on track.
Sometimes that's what people hire me for is make sure that I don't do something stupid. And that's my job.
Right. Well, that's got to be a pretty cool aspect of your job.
It's hard to hold people accountable, even if they know they want to be held accountable. To tell them, cut it out. You're right. I mean, nobody likes that.
Well, they want to be held, have somebody to hold them accountable until they need to be held accountable, and then they don't like it.
Isn't that the way for all of us, though, right? So the really wise ones go, yes, you're right. I know. Thank you. And they hate it, but they know it's good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love it. Well, let's make sure that our audience knows how to get a hold of you and where your resources are.
Yeah, so you can go visit my website, drrogerhall.com, drrogerhall.com. On it, you can order my books, Staying Happy, Being Productive, DIY Brain, and more recently, Expedition is available through Amazon. So really excited to let people know about what I do, and I have another book on the way, DIY Brain.
DIY Leader Brain.
I'm sorry, DIY Leader Brain. Yes.
Yeah, DIY Brain's great. Got to read that along with Staying Happy, Being Productive. I mean, all these are amazing, but I'm super excited for DIY Leader Brain as well. And then you got a quiz that on your people can take.
Yeah, you can take the quiz, the freak out quiz, and once you're done with that, that'll take you to a course that's online called the Freak Out course, and it is an online opportunity to learn about how to overcome your own fears.
Excellent. Very good. All right. Well, thanks again. There we go. Yeah, this has been great. Hopefully people see this at the beginning of their journey, and then can kind of back into it. And again, we'd be honored to help you in the leadership development process. So feel free to reach out to us. We'd be glad to see how we can help. Otherwise,
Thanks for having me today, Jerod.
Absolutely. Take care.